to Finca Teca Linda. My name is Benji. We are an eco-friendly farm dedicated to commercial reforestation of teak wood. What is commercial reforestation? It means to take some land that priorly was used for another activity and plant trees for use in the industry of wood and logging, right? Thanks to sustainable and eco-friendly option like ours, big part of the global demand for wood doesn't fall on the native forest still existing around the globe and is satisfied more by these legal sources like we do. Together with the teak, we also have around 50 hectares of protected forest, which is completely full with animals, rivers, a lot of native trees like cocobolo, rongrong, almendro de montaña, and many more. And yeah, we tried to make it all kind of work together in a symbiosis. All this land where we planted the teak on used to be old cattle land or used for cows, and we planted the teak on it. For who doesn't know, cattle is a big producer of emissions like carbon dioxide and others to the atmosphere, while a teak plantation during its 20 to 25 years of life captures carbon and produces a lot of oxygen. So even though the trees get to be cut at some point, during this lifetime they make a big benefit to the planet, different than the cattle does. Thanks to this, we are like under a regime of FONAFIFO, which is el Fondo Nacional de Financiamiento Forestal, which is like an independent government institution that takes money from the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, and distributes it in different projects and farms that do these type of services. It's called environmental services. So for every hectare that you plant teak without destroying native forests in order to do it, where you plant it on old cattle land, on old farming land or whatsoever, they pay you basically a little bit of money to help yourself out. And basically what they're doing is they're buying the carbon, capturing from you, and then this is turned into like an action on the stock market. And FONAFIFO sells these to other countries. So let's say a country like Luxembourg in Europe, which is highly industrialized, very small, they don't have the ability to clean the planet somehow. So they give a lot of money to the World Bank and so on, which gives it to FONAFIFO, which then distributes it between different projects and farm like ours. So we clean the planet for them, right? And at the same time, we do make a profit from it, right? Big part of this profit are used for reforesting with native species in other places that are not gonna be used for teak, and for many other social activities in the area, right? So yeah, teak farming is really like a long game. The trees are mature around 18 years old. But normally to get the most out of them, you gotta wait at least until 25 years. At the beginning, you plant all the trees very together in lines. So as they're very close together, they have to compete for light. This makes them grow up very quick, very straight. And once they have reached like the wanted height, you have to start taking out trees in between. This is called raleo in Spanish, or thinning in English. You need to do these in order to take out sick trees, the bad trees, and also some good trees to keep good shape in the farm. And once you take them out, the ones left finally have space to grow thicker and thicker. And yeah, that's like a big part of the process. You gotta do around 3 to 4 thinnings during these 20 to 25 years. And the last 2 thinnings are also already somehow profitable, right? But yeah, this is very type of lifestyle. It's a big dedication to do this. People think there is big money in wood, but this is only for very big companies. For smaller farms like us, we also try to just live with the place, live with the earth, and take just as much as we need to do everything we do without taking more than that. You see the Y that it makes? That's normally considered like a lower quality because it has a very short log. So that's one that if you see it inside the plantation, you would normally take out. Sometimes you also gotta leave some because they help you to sustain the road. Some even that are at the side of the mountain or of the native forest. They're good there even though they're thin or sometimes very full with vines because they kind of keep the forest out and protect the rest of the trees of the plantation. And many people, because they see they're very thin or have a lot of curves, tend to cut the ones at the sides. But what happens when you do this is then the forest, the native forest, comes in one step more, and you don't want that to happen until the final harvest is done. You take out all the teak roots, and then you make a treatment to the earth also to reforest with the native species. But at least for the time of the development of the plantation, you will always want to try to keep the forest out without having to attack it or cut it. So you do it by building or leaving this natural barrier of teak trees at the side that even though they don't get as pretty, they do that function of protecting the rest of the plantation. Another thing that happens a lot is lightning. I'm always looking out for trees that look like if they're drying, because that means normally a lightning strike, and then those trees will start rotting if you leave them there too long. While if you cut them when they're still in a good shape, you can still sell them and get some value off of them. Yeah, here you can see like a big hole over there in the sky, sort of. That's because a lightning struck there, so it killed many trees around, and that creates kind of bigger holes or gaps within the plantation. And in some ways it's unavoidable, it's nature. But yeah, you're always trying to keep the plantation as even as possible in its distribution, without many holes, without many places where the trees are still together. Keep it all the same throughout the plantation. So that's what we also look to do in the thinning. It's taking the sick trees, the ugly trees, the small trees out, but also taking some good trees out in order to keep this healthy distribution of the general farm. Original from Burma, if it's still called like that, and from India, and it's not a native species to Costa Rica or Central America, but it adapts very great to this climate, as we have a tropical climate, and teak needs a dry season and rainy season, right, in order to do its natural processes, like trees in Europe or other parts of North America and colder parts need the forestations in order to do their natural processes, right? Like, for example, the seeds need to stay underneath the leaves that fall in autumn, and then the snow falls on top. They need to feel that cold, so when the spring comes again, they're like ready to grow. Same happens here where we live, but the other way around. Here it happens in the dry season, actually. The trees here need the dry season with lots of sun after they had the whole rainy season to take strength. And once the dry season starts, they all start blooming and after producing these seeds. These seeds fall down on the ground. All the leaves here fall on top too, as we have the leaf fall in the dry season, of course. The trees let all the leaves fall down in order to keep water in their trunks and stems. And all those fall on top of the seeds too. And once the rainy season starts again, all these seeds that have been dried during the summer and need these kind of toast in order to then grow out, once they get all the water from the rainy season again, they start growing. And yeah, this is why teak goes very well in Central America. Most of the teak is sold to India, also a lot is sold to China, and some of it is sold to Europe. But in India they have like a 5,000-year-old culture working with this wood, and they make like a lot of building out of it and use even the last single little piece to make artworks and many things. So they buy this per container basically, and the way we sell it is loading containers here that then get exported. Also in Costa Rica itself, teak is used a lot, and despite it being very fast growth, it's still a very dense, hard, and even dark wood, which makes it go in the category of fine woods. And that's why it works for us to do on old cattle lands. We plant it over 20 years, we cut it, and then we plant again, and the whole process starts again, and we're constantly trapping carbon dioxide and producing oxygen. Another very interesting thing is that all the animals in Costa Rica, the native animals, deers, birds, macaws, they like the teak fruit. So the Minay, which is like the Costa Rican environmental authority, has cataloged teak as a species that is healthy for the Costa Rican environment. Of course, in a plantation, you see only the teak trees as a monoculture. But in the forest, if a bird eats a seed and leaves it somewhere in the forest and a new plant comes out, of course there the teak will never get the strength like in a monoculture and would never take all over the native like forest and fauna, right? But flora, sorry. But yeah, due to this, they have cataloged it as a wood that's healthy for the native environment. And here we see deers, raccoons, coatis, even the ant bears, and many animals that come and eat the seeds. So we are also happy that we're providing food at the same time to all these animals. try to do it all as sustainable as possible. But many of the big farms, they tend to spray their farms in order to try and kill these termite, fungi, and any other affections that the plant or the trees might have. But what we have found, talking to many engineers, many people in this field, is that no matter how much you spray them with poisons and stuff, it will not make a change. When you have small crops that you eat, fast-growing plants, that's different. There you can influence a lot. But when it's big trees, then there's really not much to do. So a lot of people or farms spend a lot of money, poison the earth a lot in order to get some result that they don't really get. So we here decided just to use zero sprays, zero poisons, also no fertilizers. A lot of people fertilize their farms, which you can do when the plants are small. It's actually good to do it when they're small. But after 4 or 5 years, the trees are so big and the absorption rate of the nutrients in the soil is very slow. So if you put fertilizer in the soil, it will wash away before the tree is even able to absorb it. So you're wasting money and you're throwing a lot of poison and chemicals into the ground, which will have a zero effect on the trees. So sadly, still a lot of farms do this. They're very big, many big, more corporate-owned ones. And they're so used to these industrial processes of planting and agriculture that apply this to the teak too. But it's completely unnecessary, and all they get with this is poisoning the ground. Issue especially for dead wood, of course, but there are two types of termites. The typical one that lives above the ground, it makes its nest in the trees, and it only consumes the little parts of the tree that are starting to get rotten, and also they travel around the forest looking for dead wood and rotten wood in order to eat it, bring it to their nest. But then there's also another type of termite which lives in the ground. This one is actually more dangerous for the trees because this one tends to attack the live tissue in the middle. Teak trees in the middle have a little sort of line or heart of sponge, which is very thin, 1/2 centimeter thick only, but it goes all the way through the center of the tree and up. And the termite that live in the ground come from underneath, slowly start eating up these live spongy tissue, which then kills the center of the tree. So what this does is that the tree will look alive, it will look great, still get thick, but in the moment you cut it, it actually has a big hole in the center. This is also part of the nature of trees. As many people know, older trees tend to have a hole in the center. So that's also a reason why you cannot really leave the wood for too many years either. The average final harvest time for teak is around 20 years, and a lot of people tend to leave it up to 30 or 40 because the heart gets better, more dark, and you get a higher value for the wood, but also you will find much more trees in the moment of cutting down that have a big hole in the center due to the termites, fungi, or just the natural development of the tree. But also for the distribution, the even distribution part of the farm, the one thing you gotta look at is the trunks, the logs. So that's the first indicator of how together the trees are, or how much space they have, and it's also the first indicator of their quality, of course, because the trunk is what you will sell. But then the second very important part for this even distribution is the canopies of the tree, because you cannot just look at the trunks and be like, oh, I'm going to cut this one, this one, this one, and just try to make an even distribution of the trunks itself. You also have to look at the canopies and take those into consideration too to make the selection. Sometimes it could be you have 3 or 4 very good trees, and they all look very similar, and you don't know which one to choose in order to take out, because it could be any of them would be a good choice. So then you look up into the canopies, and you look for the one that has the best canopy, the healthiest canopy, and you try to pick out the one that seems to be like oddly kind of pushed into there. I don't know if I explain myself. So by looking at these two things, you kind of take an average or find the middle in order to select the tree. So sometimes, even though by looking at the trunks it would seem that the most obvious choice is this one, if you start looking at the canopies, you maybe go, oh, actually this other one is the best choice. So yeah, you gotta be playing with this a lot. Also, this is a factor why thinnings should never be done in the deep summer. Now we're starting the summer, but the canopies still have a lot of leaves and a lot of green, which allows you to see this factor. But once the summer advances more, the leaves start falling down more, getting thinner, then it is really hard to recognize how much light a tree is taking or not, how much space it has on the top where its canopy is, and really then the only thing you're choosing them from is through the trunks, but that can be counterproductive once the rainy season starts again and you actually see that the canopies are still very jammed or packed together, you know. So yeah, that's why we're doing this now, beginning of January, before it all starts getting